All right, gardening people, it is time to get some seeds started with the early babies. Now, there aren't many seeds that you need to start this early. We're right now in the middle of December in the Northern Hemisphere, and there's a couple we need to think about. And I'm going to tell you, the ones that take the longest sometimes are worth the effort. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about Lisianthus. Just take a look. This is what it looks like. It's a beautiful flower. It blooms profusely. Typically, if you start it at the right time, in July into August. Great blooms, incredible cut flower, but takes a long time to grow. Up to 9 months, which is why I'm talking to you in December. Okay, so I'm going to take you through the step-by-step of how I'm getting my Lisianthus started this year. Let's go. So there's very few things you need to start. You need a growing medium. I am using a mixture of coco coir as well as some potting soil. You can start it in just straight seed starting mix or coco coir, but I'm starting with a little bit of potting soil, a little bit of compost, because Lisianthus takes so long to grow that I want to make sure there's some soil with some nutrients in it, and I can amend with some liquid fertilizer as well later on. But because they take so long to grow into a little seedling that you can pot up, I'm going to put some more rich amendments in the soil just to make sure they have the nutrients they need so they can grow nice and strong. You can use any combination. You might want to amend with some worm castings. You might want to add in some vermiculite. It's really up to you. You're going to have to experiment and see what works best for you. One note, whatever you are using, make sure you bring it indoors to acclimate to the indoor temperature before you get started. Because if you put some very cold medium in with the seeds, you might have a lot of non-starters. So keep it warm, bring it inside for a couple days before you get it going. The next thing you're going to do is once you've mixed all of your soil, you are going to moisten it up. You don't want to get it too wet, but you do want to moisten it. I use a spray bottle because I find it gives me a little bit more control of the moisture level, and you're just going to mix it in. You don't want it wet, you want it moist. I know some people don't like that word, but it's the right word for this. Looks good. Some people might start with a dry mix. It's really up to you. Again, you're going to have to experiment with your seed starting medium to find out what works best. But I find a mixture of about 30% potting soil, 10% compost, and the rest seed starting medium, like a coco coir or a peat-based seed starting medium, which I don't really use anymore, is probably best. Next thing you need are your seeds. You want to order these well in advance. They are pricey. They are a little bit tricky to find because they are very hard to grow, so they're not very popular. But I think they're worth it. And I think they're worth it if you're looking for a little challenge, and I am. So there's probably about this one, there's 25 seeds. And the germination rate is actually on the back of the seed packet itself. And it says here 94% germination rate, and it was packed and tested in 2024. You do want to look at the date. All seed packages that are sold need to have a date where the seeds were harvested and stored, because if they're old seeds, the likelihood of germination is pretty low. So you want to make sure they're fairly recently harvested. Next thing you want is your seed starting tray. There's a lot of different trays out there. There's silicone ones. There's ones that you can get from the dollar store. You can use little pots, whatever. I am using this one from Lee Valley because it is a self-watering system, which I really like. It uses a system where it soaks up the water from this little mat with the water underneath, and it makes sure they stay consistently watered and not overwatered, which for me, as someone who doesn't pay attention, is really important. And it has a moisture meter on the side here that will tell me when it's getting dried out to add a little bit more water. So now what we're going to do is we are going to fill the little slots in my tray. So right now we have a 4x6. So I'm going to have 24 Lisianthus. Am I going to have 24? Probably not. But we'll see how many germinate, and we can always add and amend. You want to make sure also that your tray has a humidity dome on it. Pretty important for most seeds. Not all, but I find most. A humidity dome is key for keeping in the moisture. So let's fill up our trays. All right, we're ready for our seeds. They're very small, so get your glasses on. I'm doing 3 varieties. So we have some Arena Apricot, some Corelli Lavender, and some Voyage First Love. Sounds romantic, no? A lot of the seeds for Lisianthus come pelleted, which means there's kind of like a little coating over top of it. Do not worry about it. That will dissolve away with a little bit of moisture just to protect the seed. We're going to put our thumb in to create little landing pads for each of the seeds. And while I'm talking about this, I just want to remind you, it's really a smart idea to only sow the seeds of one variety or one type of flower in the same tray. They all need varying things. If you put dahlia seeds in here with Lisianthus, it's going to be way off. The light requirements are going to be different. You're going to have to change the temperature. You're going to have to pot them up at a different time. It's just best to keep all the same ones together in the same kit and caboodle. I love these little trays from IKEA because it makes it very easy to see them all. They're so small. Now, I use my finger. Some people use a toothpick. I find that's more hassle than it's worth. And I am just going to put one seed in each. Sometimes if you are doing, a different kind of seed that's not so pricey, I might put more than one, but oh, that one just went in there. I'm going to try to put it right in the middle of the little pod there. Well, that's 2. Oh, that's 2. Sometimes the universe just decides for you. Can you see? You got teeny tiny. If you do have 2 varieties in one tray, you can label them, but honestly, I like a little surprise in my life. Don't forget to press the seeds down into the soil medium. Just make sure they make contact. Very important. If you do put 2 in one of the pods and they both germinate, you can thin them out. It's okay. You can just snip one off. Now, it's really important to maintain the light because Lisianthus need light to germinate, which means they need to be in direct contact with the light in order to pop out of their seed. So don't cover them with a thick layer of potting soil or medium. No, 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 no. Leave them out, exposed. All right, now we are going to very carefully, not that carefully, they're seeds, they're pretty resilient. We're going to move them, the tray, onto the mat. Ta-da! C'est fini. C'est fini. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move them down under the grow lights in my grow room, and I'm going to put these babies on a heat mat because my basement is a little bit too cold. We're looking for kind of optimal range of around 20 degrees Celsius for germination. Once they germinate, there's a little more variation, but for pre-germination, to get them to that germination stage, I want to hit around 20 degrees Celsius to have my maximum chance at getting most of them to germinate because it's a long road. We have 7 months ahead of us. So let's go down to the seed starting room. All right, welcome to my little seed starting room down here. It's my little corner in my kids' playroom, but it works like a charm. So what we've done right now is we've turned on our full spectrum grow light and we've placed the heat mat at a temperature of 20 degrees. Because we need light to germinate, we might want to make this a little bit closer. Generally speaking, you want to keep the light source about 3 inches or so away from the grow point. It can vary from time to time. Obviously, some things don't need light to germinate, but once they germinate, all plants do need light. Lisianthus need about 14 hours of light per day. You don't want to keep it on 24/7. That will not be good. They do need the rest. And because they have such a long period from germination to bloom, there is a high likelihood that you'll get some algae on the top of the seed tray. No worries. You can do a couple things. You can either put a little bit of vermiculite on top, a little crushed vermiculite, or you can spread a very tiny layer of cinnamon, which will help absorb the moisture. But even with a little algae, they'll still probably grow just fine. And to get them a little closer to the light source, you can either lower it down or you can just prop it up with some kind of box. And then you just need to check on them. Not every day. You're not going to see anything here for a few weeks. Nothing. You're not even going to know if they're going to germinate. But what you do want to make sure is that there's water in the reservoir, and that you are making sure you're bottom watering your tray if you don't have a self-watering jobby. And other than that, there's not much for you to do. So check back in with me. I'm going to give a little check-in on this in maybe a couple months. But hopefully, if things go correctly and things go our way, these will be ready to be planted out come late April. And they're going to be gorgeous. So start some seeds, silly. What are you waiting for? See you next time.